My name is Sunaina Kuhn. Welcome to my LifePage. Today I'll be talking about data analysis, but before we start on that, let me introduce myself. So I went to school at Woodstock, post which I did my bachelor's from Purdue University. I got a bachelor's in political science. I was very interested in policy work. After that, I worked actually for a year teaching business English in Budapest in Hungary because I felt like I needed a little bit of work experience before I came back to India. And that was about 8 months, after which I joined Teach for India. I was given a government school in Dharavi, Mumbai. And I've been involved with research after my fellowship ended. So I've worked in Ahmedabad as a research associate at the Indian Institute of Management in Ahmedabad. And I've done 2 years as a senior associate at Evaldesign. Data analysis is when you are examining data that you have either collected or someone else has collected. And most likely you're looking for patterns to answer questions that you might have posed before you went ahead and started the data collection. So that's essentially, in very rough terms, what it is. The first thing that you really need to consider is whether you're interested in statistics. A lot of what data analysis is applying a statistical model to your data to be able to identify these patterns. The first one I'd like to talk about is critical thinking and creativity. When you're looking at a huge set of data that you have in front of you, you are going to have to approach it in a very creative way. So you need to already have planned in advance what you want to be getting out of your data, what you want your data to look like when you get it in raw form. So to be able to imagine that, be able to think about how you need to kind of tweak your data, you have to be able to think about it very critically and which also requires a little bit of creativity. The first one for me was I got a lot of personal satisfaction out of doing this job, was mostly because you're really able to kind of validate the observations you make in the field, right? So it's not just what you have seen, but now you actually have numbers that can back you up when you make a statement. And I think that would give me a lot of satisfaction, because when I was explaining to my clients or when I was having these conversations about what I have seen happen on the field, I had a lot of data to back my statements up. So it just makes your point a whole lot stronger. Another negative of this job, I would say, is that if you're not careful, then you can become too focused on just the data and the numbers that you're looking at. So I mentioned this when we were talking about the kind of education you would need, and that having a little bit of industry expertise is good. And I think it's easy to kind of get lost in the numbers and forget what the bigger picture is. So my days were very different based on what stage of the project I was in, because if I'm in a pre-pilot stage or in a pilot stage of the project, that means I'm developing the instruments that will go out to survey the students for the program that we are assessing. And in that stage, my primary responsibility as a data analyst was to look at the instruments and make sure that we are being able to answer the questions that we want to answer. So a lot of times what this will mean is that you have sat with your client and come up with a list of questions that your client is trying to answer about their own program. And that has to be reflected in the kind of questions you're asking on your survey. So on those days, I would most likely be in office at 9 o'clock. And I was spending my days usually working with the team that was putting the instruments together. On other days when I've had to be in the field, the timings for that will vary, because being on the field means that you're often either visiting the vendor who is going to do your data entry for you, or you're working with the team that's going to collect your data for you. So that could be that you're awake and working at 8 o'clock in the morning. Sometimes that means you're working till 10 o'clock at night, but it's very variable depending on what your project is like. And the final stage is when your project or your evaluation has wrapped up and you have received the data from your vendor. And then my days were fairly long, but it's for a short amount of time. So only for about 3 or 4 weeks were my days, going from 9 o'clock in the morning to about 9 o'clock at night, because you're in the process of pulling out the data and looking at cleaning it up and doing the analysis, and finally putting all of that into a report that you can submit to your client. So I hope I've given you a balanced view on data analysis. Thank you very much.